In this video, we're going to explore a variety of different species interactions. Our first interaction would be competition, and in this, organisms are fighting over a resource that's in limited supply, and that resource could be food, water, a mate, habitat, and so on. And competition will be detrimental to one or both of the species, so we often say this is a minus or a -0. Two species can't occupy the same niche, and the one that's better suited will be the one that will thrive and the other one will decline. So an example of competition might be an Arctic fox and a snowy owl competing for the same food source, which would be an Arctic hare. Another example of competition could be an octopus and a sarcastic fringe-head fish competing for the same niche, the same habitat in the ocean floor. Our second species interaction is predation, and predation is when one organism actively kills and feeds on another one. So one organism benefits and one is obviously harmed because it's being killed. So it's a plus-minus. So some examples would be lions preying on zebras and gazelles. Robins preying on earthworms would be another example. Yet another example would be a weasel or a stoat preying on a rabbit 10 times its size. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the organism is larger than its prey. There are lots of different strategies to take down prey. So you could be smaller. Some organisms have developed some interesting defense mechanisms to protect them from their predators. So plants will develop thorns to make it tricky to eat or perch on the plant. Fir trees will mimic insect growth hormone to prevent the insects from maturing so they can never destroy them. Monarchs will use milkweed toxins to make their predators ill. And then viceroys, which look identical to monarchs but are perfectly safe, actually use mimicry. They look like a monarch, so a bird won't eat them because they think they'll make them sick too. And then camouflage and mimicry are examples of defense mechanisms. Now, symbiosis is a relationship where the organisms of differing species live together. So there are 3 types. One of them is mutualism. The second is Commensalism, and the third one is Parasitism. So mutualism is when both organisms benefit, neither one is harmed, so it's a plus-plus interaction. So an example of this would be a clownfish and a sea anemone. The clownfish hides in the stinging tentacles of the anemone because clownfish aren't affected by them, so they're protected by the anemone. And then the clownfish drops bits of food in the anemone, and that helps feed the anemone. Commensalism is when one organism benefits and the other one is not impacted. So this is a +0 interaction. So an example of this would be when a remora fish suctions itself to a shark and gets a ride to a new food source. So the shark isn't being harmed, but the remora fish is benefiting by the free transportation. Our third example would be parasitism, and that's when one organism lives in or on another one, and it feeds off of it, but doesn't kill it. So this is another plus-minus interaction. So an example of that would be a tapeworm. It lives in the guts of mammals, and this is kind of what it looks like. It's not very appetizing. Interestingly, tapeworms used to be consumed on purpose during Victorian times to help people develop a slimmer waist so that they wouldn't need to wear a corset, or they wouldn't need to tie the corset as tightly because they have been deprived of nutrients by the tapeworm in their gut, so they have lost weight.